can we speak for a moment of the bard? Oh my goodness, be still my heart, right? So as you can see, we're going to be speaking of the wonderful, wonderful mind and world of Shakespeare, William Shakespeare, because I had a wonderful gift from the Miss Jen, or Miss Bow and Arrow, who sent me the Shakespeare Oracle, which is actually a tarot deck. Let the Bard predict your future, and it has captivated my heart, to say the least. This is a pip deck, and this, along with another deck she sent me, were pip decks, and not ones that were speaking to her through their beautiful pippishness. But for me, they will speak wonderfully. Can we just talk about Shakespeare? These are some of mine. I really love these little sizes of the Signet Classics. This is Measure for Measure. You can tell now is one of my favorites because it doesn't have tabs all over it. Much Ado About Nothing. Love. Othello is one of my favorite. Oh, dust. These are on a shelf that clearly I haven't dusted. This one you can tell. It's underlined. It's underlined. It's written in. I've written quite a few papers on Othello, and it's one of my favorites. For those of you who maybe have not been following my channel very long, I have a degree in literature and writing, and everything, and my master's degree in literature except for my thesis. So yes, I spent a lot of time with Shakespeare. So we have Othello. King Lear, also one of my favorites, as you can tell from the writing and the underlining. I do love King Lear. It's definitely one of my tops. Here we have Antony and Cleopatra. Not one of my favorites, although, you know, I did still obviously read it and of that nature, and so I enjoyed it, but it's definitely not one of my favorites, but definitely very dramatic. Another, as you can tell, of my absolute favorites is The Tempest. The Tempest, probably maybe the of my favorites, the most favorite of favorites. Very small play, actually. I mean, obviously this is a larger book than these, but it's actually not a very large play or long play to have, because if you look, most of this is criticism or critical theory and critical conversations about it. This, see, not even that. See, not even there. So this is all The Tempest is. So it's quite a short play, but the figure of Caliban is one that is very dear to my heart because he's the monster, right? So he's the monster. Everybody wants to put all of their everything other and bad about humanity they want to stick on the monster Caliban. And so much of my personal literary study and my thesis is about monster theory as well as folklore and these types of things, and this really fits into the idea of The Tempest as well as Midsummer Night's Dream, which we have over here. But this is just a really beautiful, and I've definitely written papers sort of in defense of Caliban. So The Tempest, probably my top. King Lear, probably second, with Othello maybe next. I do love Midsummer Night's Dream a lot. This is also probably up there with me because you do have Puck and you have the Fairy Queen and the Fairy King, and again, not a very long play, but beautifully, beautifully done. There's some great movies of these plays. There are some great movies and some not so great movies, but there are some really good ones. So, you know, you kind of have to take it as you get it. Of course, the wonderful Romeo and Juliet. Katie, my daughter, is a huge Romeo and Juliet fan. I always liked it. I liked the battle, you know, that sort of the families against each other and the tragic love story, of course. Everybody likes that, but it's never been one of my absolute favorites, as you can tell. Again, I've had many iterations of these books, so it's not always can tell by the amount of writing in tabs, because I may have gotten a different copy in cross time and moves. But Shakespeare is something I love, and I think that one of the other things would be is the sonnets. Shakespeare's sonnets. In fact, my friend Annika, who is Quillfin on YouTube, she recently messaged me and said, Shakespeare, she's like, I've got to gush for a minute, and she just went off on a gush about Shakespeare's sonnets that she had kind of rediscovered. And yes, I mean, Shakespeare's sonnets are absolutely stunning. Yes, we have all kinds of, as with anything, controversy. Who was Shakespeare, and was Shakespeare, you know, really, did he steal work from other people? Was all of the things attributed him really his? There's all kinds of questions under there, but I'm pretty comfortable in saying that probably the bulk of what we think of as Shakespeare being Shakespeare. And regardless, it's one of those things in which the name Shakespeare has gone beyond and larger than the person, the historical person of Shakespeare, right? In terms of verbiage and wordplay and intellectual play, I like to call it, in that world, Shakespeare has become one of the, you know, one of the fae, one of the people that he writes about as these archetypes for many different things. He's become that. And so in some ways, the sum has become greater than the part, the historical part. So I'm not too worried about it. So anyways, all of that 6 minutes to say, I love William Shakespeare's works. And I love the language of it. I know some people feel like the language, you know, is a barrier. Try transcribing medieval English, or Middle Ages English, right? Try some of the earlier English and having to translate that into, you know, workable poetry, and you'll say that Shakespeare is a dream to read. I grew up reading the King James Bible, and so this to me is, I think, absolutely beautiful. And while I think anybody can use any version of the Bible that they want, I will say that I've read many versions, the King James Version is the most beautiful. and it's because of this Shakespeare. So I would say, you know, get some good audiobooks where you've got a really good narrator and listen to it, because it's all, you know, he was a master of word phrasing and the words that he made up and contributed to the English language, the phrases that have become second nature, which it talks about in this book. We'll talk about that in a second. It's just well worth giving a listen. Or, you know, I love, I'll have to put a list of some of the good movies, plays made by movies, because like I said, not all are good, but there are some really good ones, and so I'll put those in the description box below, that even if, you know, Shakespeare's not your thing, these movies are fantastic and will kind of suck you in. So let's put these aside and take a look at this. So like I said, I'd heard about this, but to be honest, I thought it was an oracle because it's called the Shakespeare Oracle. It is out of print, but you can still find it. I had shown it to Patrick, and he had gotten quite excited about it, or I text and pictures, and he got excited about it. So I had looked just to see, was it, you know, could you find it? And you can easily find it in the $60 to $70 range, but we were able to find it on eBay for $37, which is only a couple dollars than the retail price, and that was just with literally, you know, 15 minutes of looking. So I do think that if this is one that you end up really liking, I think if you start to look for it, this is something that you could actually find. Now, again, you know, out of print decks are a little bit controversial, but you know, if it's something that you want, have patience, right? You know, if you see a listing for $200 on something, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the value. You know, really take the time to check out the different sites. Don't take Amazon's prices on out-of-print decks as being sort of where things are at, right? Just make sure that you just check a lot of sources, and then just kind of figure out what you want to pay for that deck, what you feel comfortable paying, and start watching, and just every so often, you know, putting it into search engines and things, and you'll be surprised at what a little bit of patience and a little bit of looking around can find you. I know that Katie, I always reference this because Katie Flowers did a video on, because she does really amazing at finding hard to find or out of print decks for reasonable prices. And so you know, take a look at, she's got on her channel a video about kind of different ways to find reasonably priced decks that are out of print. So don't despair. So here we have Shakespeare's Oracle, Let the Bard Predict Your Future, a Bronwyn Llewellyn, not, well, at least not connected with Llewellyn Publishing. Paintings are by Cynthia von Buhler, maybe? And it says, oh, this is by Fair Winds Press, is the publisher here. And it says, all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players, of course, from As You Like It. No one understands human nature as does the eternally popular William Shakespeare. His immortal works abound with countless insights into the human condition, so true, while encompassing the full range of human emotion. Who better to advise us as we struggle to navigate our own lives? Very, very, very true. So it comes in a really nice, hard, kind of hinged box here. It's not magnetic, but it closes really nicely. Quite love it. Comes with a full color guidebook, you know, with the images in color, or the depictions of the cards in color, which is really nice for when you just want to go get into bed and kind of read up, or sit on the floor like I did and read the book. You know, you don't have to try to keep your deck in order. And I really love color, and it's not because you know, I always mention that, and it's not because, oh, it's pretty, because it is pretty, but that's not really it. If I want to use a deck. So when I get a deck, I do a walkthrough, I shuffle it, and then I just want to use it. But then I might want to go back and be really reading the guidebook over. I don't want to have to put the cards back in order or just hunt through the deck to try to find a card so that I can read up on it. Having that color illustration there makes it really easy to just sit in bed or take it to the coffee shop or wherever and study up on the deck without having the cards themselves in order and in place. So that's why I really like that. It's not just because, ooh, cool, it's color. It's because it's helpful. So I really like that. It's got a nice matte finish on it, on the cover, which again, that's purely tactile goodness, but you know, we're tactile creatures. And then it has the cards. Now, these cards have been trimmed, and I will show you the depictions here, but these cards came to Jen. I think she's at a fifth of the way trimmed, so then she had to go ahead and finish trimming them, and then she passed it on to me. So 2 people have done the work for me, but they were trimmed, and I will show you what those look like. And I think I've got these. There we go. So these have been trimmed, but the backs are gorgeous. I love, obviously now they're a little bit off because of the taking off from the bottom, but I really like it. It's just a S with a seal on it, and it's just black. And it's really wonderful. It's like matte cardstock. It kind of feels similar to, say, the first edition Wild Unknown. It's quite thick. This is not going to rifle shuffle very well. In fact, at all. This will hurt my hands, I can tell, but it's really nice to hold. So there we have that. So again, I will show you, as you saw, there are depictions of what it would look like. Let me see, is there one that's bigger? No. Okay. Let me get one on this side of the page. That's a major. There's the Hanged Man. So you can see that there is this kind of gold toned border that we see at the top that goes all around the deck, and then at the bottom it has the Shakespearean character that is associated with the card. And so this has been trimmed where it just leaves the traditional tarot title and doesn't have the Shakespeare title on it, which I'm fine with. I can look it up in the book, and it keeps it quite obviously perfect, and just in terms of reading for anybody, whether or not they know Shakespeare, but you still have that added layer of the Shakespeare there. But that is how the cards look without trimming. I'm still going to go ahead and do the walkthrough, even though I'll see if I can find one that has like a flip through that has the cards fully intact, and put that in the description box below if I can find that, and that way you can see that. But I'm still going to go ahead and do a walkthrough because I'm really excited about it. So there we have, nice box, really nice, large but very nice. So I'm going to set that over to the side. I have read all the beginning of this book as well as all of the major arcana. I haven't read through all of the minor arcana, and I have to say the book is phenomenal. I really enjoy it. Let me zoom in a little bit further. I think it feels like this is a person who well knows Shakespeare, who well respects the bard, and to the memory of Evelyn Roberts Llewellyn, learn of the wise and perpend as you like it. And then for my mother, Frances Carosa, who was a gypsy at the Williams School Fun Fair every year on June 4th. She would sit in the stagecoach-shaped jungle gym, her red hair and big golden hoop earrings gleaming, and read the children's tarot cards. My friends thought she was a real fortune-telling gypsy. Maybe she is. And this is by the artist there. So, heaven for a former college English major is surely writing a book about Shakespeare. At least it was for her. So yeah, it's wonderful. So it goes into the into an introduction how she was. I really liked this though because she talks about how she was first introduced to tarot when she had lost a long-term job, and she was kind of at this precipice, and she picked a card. She didn't, you know, she read the book that accompanied it, but it really didn't even matter what the card was, because she said that the Prince of Wands didn't foretell my future, nor did he make anything happen or not happen. What he did was help me step back from the immediate upheaval in my life and see that it wasn't the end of the world. And so that, it gave her that moment to step back. I really liked that description. They talk about, she talks about why Shakespeare, and I love her answer because it was why not. I say that a lot with when people ask me like why Lenormand. Why not, right? Of course I will. But she does talk about how we've gotten a lot of good advice from Shakespeare. The better part of valor is discretion. All that glistens is not gold. Neither a borrower nor a lender be. Brevity is the soul of wit. The course of true love never did run smooth. We all know this. Let's kill all the lawyers. Who steals my purse steals trash. That's true. The pen is mightier than the sword. Well, okay, she says. Or is this a she? I don't even know. I don't even know. I got the feeling that it was a she, but I could be completely wrong. I'm not sure. Is there something in the back about the author? Yes, she. I thought so. She says, Shakespeare didn't say that last one, but he could have, which is true. So it goes on to why she would use a Shakespeare, which we talked about, why not? And because he has definitely a, you know, play after play after play that plays off of, right, the human condition in both tragic and comedic, and both comedic and tragic at the same time ways. So he talks about how Shakespeare's characters have transcended the time period and the circumstances and become archetypes for the human beings everywhere, which is really amazing, right? To have this body of work that have become archetypes. Romeo, now, I would argue, and I think others would argue, that Romeo and Juliet didn't really become an archetype as much as they depicted an archetype so beautifully, right? So a lot of his characters didn't necessarily become archetypes, but they he was really adept at tapping into those archetypes in a beautiful way. So I love that. It does have two sections. It talks about the character and the role. The character talks about the character in Shakespeare's world and how it focuses, or how it works within that tarot card, and then the role talks a lot more about the actual card meaning. And then there's quite a few spreads that look interesting to me. There is the Dilemma spread from Hamlet, a Midsummer's Night's Romance Quandary, a 5-act drama. I thought this looked really interesting. The 5 acts here of opportunity, progress, point of no return, setbacks, and then outcome. I quite liked that. The Elizabethan stage spread, 3 caskets from the Merchant of Venice, gold, what you desire, silver, what you deserve, and lead, what you get. That I think could be quite interesting. The Wheel of Fortune spread, and the Mirror spread from Richard II, where it's mirroring Richard and Henry. So I think this is interesting, right? Because number 1 is how you see the other person. Number 2 is how the other person sees themselves. Number 3 is the role the other plays for you. Number 4 is the role you play for the other, and then what you both share in the middle. That's pretty cool. And then it gets right into the cards. There is 2 to 3, I want to say mostly about 2.5 pages per major arcana. And then when it gets to the minor arcana, and same thing with the court cards, the minor number cards have about 1 page itself to cover it, which I think does quite well for what it's trying to do. So really a lot of meaty information here. I also really like, I think I skipped it because, I think it is when we go to the, before the minors. Yeah. There's a section that talks about the suits. We have the chalices, cups, coins for obviously coins or pentacles. We have the quills for swords, which I love. And then we have the scepters for the wand energy. Really good description of the 4 suits and understanding of the court cards. And then I love that it has the numbered cards, because this is a pip deck, as you will see, but they have quotes on them that are so wonderful. But it does talk about the numbers 1 through 10 and what those keywords, because I always talk about, if you can understand the numbers and you can understand the depictions of the suits, it's very easy to plug those together to create at least a base of those minors. So I really love that that's there. And then of course then we go into the minors. So like I said, I have read the full major beginning and the major arcana, and then a few of the a few of the minors as well. And I have to say, like I've said with Tarot of Delphi, there's a big difference between plugging artwork into just kind of plugging into, because okay, that kind of looks like the 2 of Cups, or okay, that kind of looks like the Fool card artistically. But whereas this, and again, the images were painted for this, so I'm not talking about the images here, but the characters that were chosen for these cards, I think have been masterfully done, really beautifully done. I was quite impressed with it. There's quite a lot of background on the character. If you don't know the play, or if you haven't read the play, it gives you really good, as well as example lines of backing up why they would choose, say, this Feste for the Fool. Why would they choose that? It gives you a nice solid amount of information, and then how that plays out in terms of the Fool. What is the Fool in tarot, and how does this depict it? And then a reversal for the card as well. So, and then they each have this a chunk from their play, and this I just love so much. So for example, we have the Fool here. So here is the wonderful Fool card. We have sort of somebody on almost like a clown gestury with the dogs and their little clown riffs here, right? Still standing on the precipice here, as we see with the Fool, so recognizable as the Fool. This fellow is wise enough to play the fool, and to do that well craves a kind of wit. He must observe their mood on whom he jests, the quality of persons, and the time. This is a practice as full of labor as a wise man's art. For folly that he wisely shows is fit, but wise men, folly fallen, quite taint their wit. I just love it. So this comes from the 12th Night and is Feste. And he plays that kind of wise fool that we can see with this quote. So I think that that's really neat. He goes on, I'm not going to read this one because I want to save it for one that I might want to read later. But it does talk about the old proverb that states that children and fools cannot lie. Shakespeare's fools speak the truth, obliquely or straightforwardly. It does talk about how the fool stands for an open mind, a fresh perspective, and optimism. This card begins the deck but stands apart from the others, like the fool's unique position in a Shakespeare play. He doesn't further the action the way a hero or heroine does, but his presence is crucial to it. He has freedom but not power. So it does talk about the unlimited potential of the human spirit with the Fool card. So anyways, it's really, really lovely. So you can see, we're going to go through these, but the Magician, again, it gives us that passage from the play that it comes from. It talks about the character. It talks about the role of the tarot card, and then it gives us a reversal. It's really well written, really well done. Love it, really, just for reading the book. I've greatly enjoyed reading that part of the book that I've gotten to. So let me zoom in here. Obviously, I'll have to tell you the character because it's not on the cards anymore, but that's okay. I will probably be reading a lot of the major arcana play bits because, you know, it's Shakespeare, right? It's a Shakespeare tarot, so what are we going to do? But the minor cards are pip cards and will go quickly, so I would say if you don't like Shakespeare, this probably isn't the video for you. So there we have the Fool, which is Feste from the 12th Night. The next one we have is the Magician, and this is Shakespeare himself, and you can see he's holding these puppets of himself, and himself is holding another puppet of himself, right? It's really awesome. So, of course, there's a famous quote that they pulled from The Tempest, which is, of course, as I said, one of my favorites. Our revels now are ended. These are actors, as I foretold you, were all spirits, and are melted into air, into thin air. And like the baseless fabric of this vision, the cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, the solemn temples, the great globe itself, yea, all which it inherits shall dissolve. We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep. This is, of course, from The Tempest. With a stroke of his quill or wand, Shakespeare summons witches, kings, armies, lovers, empresses, ghosts, and tempests, spinning the base metal of everyday life into glittering theatrical gold. He peers into our hearts and shows us what is writ there. Is this not magic? In A Midsummer's Night's Dream, he describes his own art. As imagination bodies forth the forms of things unknown, the poet's pen turns them to shapes and gives to airy nothing a local habitation and a name. So he's pulling from the fog and creating this reality within these plays that he created. I think it's wonderful, and it certainly works as the Magician. I love this Abbess card for the Empress, or for the High Priestess. I think it's absolutely, we often saw popesses or papesses in the female popes and things in historical decks, and I think the Abbess is a wonderful use for that. And this is Amelia from the Comedy of Errors. She's not in the Comedy of Errors until the very end, but as the author writes here, she holds the key that unravels the tale's mysteries. So, you know, all these things going on during the play, and then she unravels the mysteriousness of what's been going on, and so that works really well with the High Priestess. I like how in the role she writes that the Abbess guards the portal to psychic powers, women's mysteries, and spiritual knowledge. So I think it's it's just a beautiful card on top of that. Of course, here we have the Empress, who is Queen Elizabeth, this royal infant, though in her cradle, yet now promises upon this land 1,000,000 blessings, which time shall bring to ripeness. Truth shall nurse her. Holy and heavenly thoughts still counsel her. She shall be loved and feared. Her own shall bless her. From Henry VIII. I think, of course, she is the epitome, as she writes, in the role of feminine power and initiative, the creative life force, the anima in both men and women. I think it's wonderful, very well played. And then we have the Emperor of Henry VIII. Henry VIII, I am. How's that go? I can't remember, but there's a whole long song about Henry VIII. As the Emperor. Now, this is a little problematic. While I do appreciate all of the rings here for his 6 marriages and his desperate attempt to have a male heir, he did give us Elizabeth I. And certainly, I think now he is known, as somebody who is just kind of killing off his wives and divorcing, just going from wife to wife, trying to get that male heir. But I like that the author here lets us know that while we remember him as a tyrant, in his own time, as well as in this play, he was a symbol of England's greatness, beloved and admired as well as feared. He displayed the very majesty, audacity, and ruthlessness that the people expected in their monarchs at that time. Because at first when I saw Henry VIII, I was kind of like, well, I don't know about that for the emperor, right? But we do have to take it in the context of the plays, and that I would certainly agree. So there we have that. I really love this Hierophant here. This is Humphrey from Henry VI. And this is really a beautiful one because he was a mentor to Henry VI, sorry. But he, he ended up being murdered, of course, because nothing goes well in in regal history or in Shakespeare's play without tragedy. But there is this understanding that he was such a moral and patient and calming influence that things could have gone very differently had he lived to continue to counsel Henry VI. And so I think this is a beautiful, just a depiction of the Hierophant in general, peaceful. I love the owl here, this kind of wise mentor, and I think it's really beautiful. Of course, for the lovers, we have Romeo and Juliet. And the beautiful Juliet here. Oh, she doth teach the torches to burn bright. It seems she hangs upon the cheek of night like a rich jewel in an Ethiop's ear. Beauty too rich for use, for earth too dear. So shows a snowy dove trooping with crows, as yonder lady o'er her fellows shows. Did my heart love till now? Forswear it, sight, for I never saw true beauty till this night. From Romeo and Juliet. They are, of course, the archetypal lovers, the tragic story of love that ends very, very wrongly. But it does also can go, it goes with the idea of love, if that's how you read the Lover's card. But it also talks about our decisions, right? And the consequences of our decisions and choices, which if we read the Lover's card that way, you can certainly go in that direction. Beautiful card. Here we have the Chariot, which is Henry V, also from Henry VI. And that play opens with the funeral of Henry V. And sings his considerable praises because, again, to the audience, Henry V was a hero king who was brave, patriotic, chivalrous, and victorious. And so that's who we have as the charioteer here for the Chariot, which certainly makes sense and works with the context of this card. I love the Justice card. This is Portia from The Merchant of Venice. And of course they use a famous passage, which is one of my favorite passages from The Merchant of Venice. The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as a gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesses him that gives and him that takes. 'Tis mightiest in the mightiest. It becomes the throne monarch better than his crown. His scepter shows the force of temporal power, the attribute to awe and majesty, wherein doth sit the dread and fear of kings. But mercy is above the sceptred sway. It is enthroned in the hearts of kings. It is an attribute to God himself. And earthly power doth then show likest God's, when mercy seasons justice. I mean, what else do you want to say? It's Justice card, and that's a wonderful, wonderful quote for that. Here we have my beloved Caliban in the Hermit. Be not afeard, the isle is full of noises, sounds, and sweet airs that give delight and hurt not. Sometimes 1,000 twangling instruments will hum about mine ears, and sometimes voices that, if I had then waked after long sleep, will make me sleep again. And then, in dreaming, the clouds methought would open and show riches ready to drop upon me, that when I waked, I cried to dream again. I love that quote, though, that idea, that line, when I waked, I cried to dream again. I mean, we've all woken up and wish we could get back into that dream at all costs. I think it's so beautiful. But anyways, that is from the Tempest. And so it's interesting that he used the Caliban for the Tempest, and I quite like, or for the Tempest, for the Hermit. He says that the Hermit is a reminder of the value of solitude, patience, and stepping away from the cacophony of society, which is true. It's that kind of going away. And the idea of wanting to come something else. Even she talks about here that even Caliban voices the possibility of beginning anew, saying, I'll be wise hereafter and seek for grace. He was always striving for what he saw as the height of humanity, of becoming really truly human, and yet humanity was determined for him to stay a monster. But anyways, so we have the Hermit card here. And even if you're just looking at this without any knowledge of Caliban, I think that it really works as a hermit going off to kind of seek his self. Here we have the Wheel of Fortune, which plays quite a role in the time period that Shakespeare's plays were written, as well as in a lot of the idea of Shakespeare understanding that life could turn on a dime, and that sometimes we're at the top and sometimes we're at the bottom, and whether you be king or peasant, right, you have equal chance of highs and lows. This is something that really plays very well into the theme of Shakespeare, and he just uses a single quote from the 12th Night, "'Tis but fortune, all is fortune." When I first saw this, because of course it didn't have the names below it, I thought, that's interesting to have two people in the strength card. But I really quite like this because when I saw who it was, which is Katerina and Petruchio. So this is from The Taming of the Shrew, and I think this is phenomenal because there's really these two opposite and literally these forces, right, that you would think would never work, and yet they did come together and did work. And so the quote here is, "I am peremptory as she is proud-minded, and where two raging fires meet together, they do consume the thing that feeds their fury, though little fire grows great with little wind. Yet extreme gusts will blow out fire and all. So I to her, and so she yields to me, for I am rough and woo not like a babe." But yeah, the whole thing is that whole concept is this courting of two people that are just forces to be reckoned with in their own right, especially mentally and with wit and with wordage, right? And so I think that that is a beautiful depiction of two disparate energies when working together being stronger. So beautiful. Here we have the Hanged Man for Hamlet. Of course, I love the skull kind of dangled on his foot here. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them. Thus conscience does make cowards of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied over the pale cast of thought, and enterprises of great pitch and moment with this regard their currents turn awry, and lose the name of action. From Hamlet. I think this is really beautiful because Hamlet really was very complex and very reflective. Much of the play, we're listening to him thinking out loud, or we're hearing him thinking and working through things. And so having this periods of reflection that we see with the Hanged Man, I think really works quite well. I love that King Lear is in the Death card. King Lear is such a sad story. It's such a tragic, and it ends so tragically. I think to have this in the Death, because you have the tragedy of death, right? The finiteness of death here with Lear, who has really cut off his own, I don't know, it's that saying, you cut your foot off to serve your, I don't know. He really tripped himself up, and in doing so, you know, had a tragic loss of his daughter and his estate and everything, and in the end is just completely torn apart and lost. But then there is this glimmer of hope at the very end, and it's not a happy ending, but it is that glimmer of hope here. So I just think it's beautiful. The quote they use here is, "Blow winds and crack your cheeks, rage, blow, you cataracts and hurricanos, spout till you have drenched our steeples, drowned the cocks. You sulphurous and thought-executing fires, vaunt couriers to oak-cleaving thunderbolts, singe my white head, and thou, all-shaking thunder, smite flat the thick rotundity of the world, crack nature's moles, all Germans spill at once that make ingrateful man." He was just raging in the midst of the storm, and you see the rage and the chaos inside of him, the microcosm of him as an individual, played out into the raging storm in the world around him. It's just a powerful, powerful play. Powerful play. But ends so terribly tragic. So gonna stop. We're never gonna get through this, right? I'm gonna speed up some until I can't help but read it. Here we have Prospero as Temperance. This was interesting, right? Very interesting, because, and I'll just read this quick thing, because Prospero is again from the Tempest, and he leaves and he kind of runs away to this island, and it says he uses his magic not to destroy but to rebalance isolation with civilization, magic with reality, revenge with forgiveness, and evil with good. His goal accomplished, Prospero renounces his rough magic, leaving one kind of power for another in Milan. So there is that sense of being the alchemist in Prospero, where he's mixing this and that and this and that to try to produce the results that he's trying to attain. So I do think it works really well. I think it's quite lovely and interesting that they use Puck as the devil. Much more of the trickstery, pixie sort of folklore that was, he was also Robin Goodfellow. This is a spirit that was associated with travelers and households in the time folk. So Shakespeare didn't make up Puck. This is a folklore that Shakespeare taps into, as he does in a lot of things. And I think that it's really quite interesting to use Puck as the devil here, because is this a dream or is this a nightmare, right? Is this a shadow? What's going on? We're not entirely sure. Is Puck good or is he bad? There's a lot of complexity to the devil. How far can we dance in the dark right before it's not fun and it's actually problematic and turns to addiction? It's quite interesting construct. I am that merry wanderer of the night. I jest to Oberon and make him smile, and sometimes lurk I in a gossip's bowl, and very likeness sweetness of a roasted crab, and when she drinks, against her lips I bob, and on her withered dewlap poured the ale. The wisest aunt, telling the saddest tale, sometimes for 3-foot stool mistaketh me. Then slip I from her bum, down topples she, and then the whole choir hold their hips and laugh, and waxen in their mirth and knees and swear a merrier hour was never wasted there. So it's that sort of raucousness, that trickstery energy that you have to be really careful with. But I thought that was a really neat twist there. The Tower card is talking about, this is actually a play I don't have a lot of knowledge of, which is Timon of Athens, and there is I think another card that uses or comes from this play as well, but it's talking about dramatic, unexpected upheaval that's turning everything on its head. His story is one that shattered ideals. I'm going to have to go back and reread this because I don't actually know a lot about this particular play, so I'm excited about that. Here we have the star is Cleopatra. I thought this was interesting too because, you know, Cleopatra is such a strong character, and such a, we see at least in Shakespeare's play, she's always on. She's that, like, that power. I could see her, I guess, a little bit more as the Empress than the star. But it does talk about wish fulfillment, which I think is kind of not so much her, because I think she really schemes and works and does, you know, rules her way through her life. But it does talk, it's interesting because it really talks about seeing your place. She believed very firmly in her place in the world, and she, you know, trusted in that. And so there is that kind of connotation of confidence in self in this particular star card that I think is really interesting. Love the moon card. Great business must be wrought ere noon upon the corner of the moon. There hangs a vaporous drop profound. I'll catch it ere it comes to ground. And that distilled by magic sleights shall raise such artificial sprites as by the strength of their illusion shall draw him on to his confusion. With Macbeth. I thought that they would play, I thought that they would kind of Toil and Trouble, do the kind of, oh, there's another scene that I should try to find and see if I can find it. But I thought that that would be the quote that they would use. But I do love this. It just talks about being easy to lose your way, not being able to trust what you say, the changeableness of the moon. So it does talk about things being out of everyday experience. But it's just really awesome. I love it. The Sun, this was from Love's Labour's Lost, and this is the King of Navarre and the Princess of France, Ferdinand. There's this whole thing that goes on where everybody's going to swear off of women and feasting and all pleasures, and, you know, of course, by the end, everybody is falling in love and doing all kinds of things of that nature. So it is the accomplishments, joys, triumph, and I do like that there's no naked babies. Here we have the Judgment card, which is interesting because this is Vincentio, who is from Measure to Measure. And I thought this was quite interesting because in this play, Vincentio feels like he's been too easy on his people, and so he says he's leaving, and he puts his deputy to rule his place because he thinks that the town needs to have a strong hand on it. But as he starts to watch, because he doesn't actually leave, you know, that happens a lot in Shakespeare where the kings go out amongst the people and kind of learn lessons themselves, right? And so when he realizes that having judgment with no compassion or no mercy is actually not very good at all, right? And so he ends up coming back and kind of taking things back over after lots of terrible things, of course, happens as happens in Shakespeare's play. But it's being conscious and awareness, and it's beautiful because it does talk about here in the card that this is a time of judgment, to evaluate accomplishments or face consequences of what you've done. So it's that idea of assessing, right, and weighing yourself up at that, to that very point, and then moving forward and taking control of the situation after you do that period of assessment. So I think that works really well. And then we have the World card as the Globe Theater. And of course, they use the very famous quote from As You Like It, "All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his act being 7 ages." So, of course, this is the theater, the whole world that encompasses on the stage. So I thought that was really, really awesome. So there we go. I know that was a very long look at the major arcana, but it's, you know, it's Shakespeare. It's Shakespeare, people. So it will go much quicker because the rest of the cards are pips, but they're very special pips because they're pips with quotes on them. And I say to my clients all the time, because, you know, I'm obsessed with the Lavish Earth crystal deck because it has quotes and crystals, and what's better than quotes and crystals? I love them both, and this is like Shakespeare quotes. So we've got numbers and elements, suits, and Shakespeare quotes. What is not to love? And I think that they did an amazing job using the quotes for them. And of course, I'm not going to read them all because that would take us forever. But you know, if we just look the ace here, "Be not afraid of greatness," from the 12th night with the Ace of Wands. Assay the power you have from measure to measure. Figure it out. Plan out what you're going to do. Where's your power? What are you going to do with that? To thy own self be true from Hamlet. Delays have dangerous ends from Henry VI. A horse, my kingdom for a horse from Richard the Third. So it talks, so it goes into in the guidebook of what's going on in the play to do with this particular quote and how that would tie into the meaning of the 5 of Scepters or the 5 of Wands. So it's very meaningfully done. They didn't just slap on quotes onto cards, even in the minors. Really beautiful. I'm very impressed with the quotes as well as with the pips, just in general. I love pips. So I'm going to go until we get to some other ones I love. So here we have the 6 of Wands, the 7 of Wands, the 8 of Wands, the 9. Have patience and endure for the 9 of Wands. Much ado about nothing. I love that. And it talks about oppression, so this is more of the Rider-Waite-Smith weightiness of the 10 of Wands. And then for the court cards, we have the Lady of Scepters, which are all associated with, also with characters. So, for example, the Lady of Scepters is Volumnia. These are more minor characters from Coriolanus, which is not a play in which I don't even know if I've read it, to be honest. Here we have Richard from Henry VI as the Lord of Scepters. So we have Lady and Lords for the Page and the Knights. And then we have the Queens and the Kings. So for the Queen of Scepters, we have Catherine of Aragon, which is awesome, from Henry VIII. And then for the King of Scepters, we have Philip the Bastard from King John. So we do have minor characters playing in the court cards. I love coin suits in pip decks, and this is no exception. Live Rich and Happy from Timon. Your choice is not so rich and worth as beauty from The Winter's Tale. Profits will accrue from Henry V. Gold that is put to use, more gold begats from Venus and Adonis. See, that stability though. See, I like that though. Oh. I greatly fear my money is not safe for the number 5, which is shaky circumstances. Neither a borrower nor a lender be from Hamlet. The 6 of Coins is often about giving, right? Don't lend it or borrow it, but just give it freely with charity. The 7 of Coins here. The 8 of Coins. The 9 of Coins. My bounty is boundless as the sea from Romeo and Juliet. and the 10 of coins. No legacy is so rich as honesty. I love that. All of this so ends well. That all's well that ends well, because it has that word legacy, which the 10 of coins has to do with. And then we have the Lady of Coins, the Lord of Coins, the Queen of Coins, and the King of Coins. But you can see if you just read these as regular court cards, they're beautiful. The sword suit is the quill suit here, which I love. Action is eloquence. To be or not to be, that is the question with the two of your comment that you need to ask yourself some questions there. Give sorrow words from Macbeth, which is beautiful. I mean, this is definitely a Rider-Waite-Smith interpretation of the Three of Swords or quills. Make not your thoughts your prisons. I summon up remembrance of things past. So see, some of these are from the sonnets. This is from the Tempest, the Six of Quills. A turn or two I'll walk to still my beating mind. Walking on. So coming from a difficult situation, and the Tempest needs to calm down, so moving away from the situation. Words before blows with Seven of Quills. The Eight of Quills. Thy spirit within thee hath been at war, from Henry IV. The Nine of Quills. Where care lodges, sleep will never lie, from Romeo and Juliet. Number 10 of the Swords. Our doubts are traitors, from Measure of Measures. And then the Lady of Quills, the Lord of Quills, the Queen of Quills, and the King of Quills. And then that brings us to the final suit of cups. You can also see some colorations, the yellows here in the suit of quills. In the coins, we have the green tones, we have the reds in the wands, and now the blues in the cups. I really love minor cards that do that, because it just visually lets us really see the energy movement. So let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments, from one of his sonnets. Ask we what you will, I will grant it, from As You Like It. I'm not going to keep going. Four of Cups, the Five of Cups. Oh, beware, my lord of jealousy, from Othello. The Six of Cups. What's the Five of Cups? Oh, that's one. Which is kind of interesting, because I don't think of it. Well, it should. It does work for the Five of Cups. I don't want to blow these, because maybe you're going to go watch Othello now. The Seven of Cups. The Eight of Cups. The course of true love never did run smooth. The Nine of Cups. Love comforteth like sunshine after rain, from Venus and Adonis. And the Ten of Cups. If music be the food of love, play on, from the 12th Night. The Lady of Cups, or Chalices, sorry. The Lord of Chalices. The Queen of Chalices. Look at that image. Let's see who she is. Oh, this is from The Winter's Tale. This is Hermione, which was the queen. And she gets all worked up, got all caught up in her, I think, her husband's jealousy, which happens a lot. Her baby is sent away because he thinks it's not hers, and she's always very sweet and kind. Do not weep, good fools, there is no cause. When you shall know your mistress has deserved prison, then abound in tears. Because she didn't deserve it. She stays very calm. The quote that they use is, my past life has been as continent, as chaste, as true, as I am now unhappy, which is more than history can pattern. For life I prize it as I weigh grief, which I would spare. For honor, 'tis a derivative from me to mine, and only that I stand for. Very gentle spirit, which does go with the Queen of Cups. Sad. And then we have the King of Cups, which is Antony, from Antony and Cleopatra. So there you have it. The Shakespeare Oracle, aka Tarot. I'm not sure again why they call it that, but what are you going to do? So Okay, I'm back. I've given it a good floor shuffle. Yeah, this is definitely a handful, but well worth the handful, in my opinion. Let's just, first of all, just take a look. I always like to put it in my pattern of a normal large tarot reading for myself, because I like to see it. But you can already see, right, how the yellow wand or quills or swords, and which is yellow is a traditional color for air, and the red of the wands really stands out beautifully. And the blue from the cups. So I really love the color aspect of this deck. I think that's really gorgeous. Because of these quote swoops, also the major arcanas really stand out as well. So I quite like that visually. I think that looks really gorgeous. But if you know me, I really love to try out when decks have. I really want to do this one short one, so let's do this one. I love decks or guidebooks that have their own spreads that make sense to the world of the cards, right? So let's take a look at the 3 caskets. I really like the look of that one. And because it's 3, I'm going to do, here is what do you desire, the Queen of Quills, which is me, desire myself. What do you deserve, the Hermit, which is these are my 2 significator cards. And then what do you get? What you get is the 4 of Swords. A turn or two I'll walk to still my beating mind. So that's interesting, and actually says quite a lot to me. That's actually quite powerful, because these are 2 reflective of me, but this is reflective of me kind of, because the Queen of Swords for me is very much that idea of our past pains and the difficult things in our past is what becomes the seat of our power. It's what allows us to be empathetic. Maybe not compassionate as much as the Queen of Cups, but the Queen of Swords is empathetic because of the difficulties of the things that they've experienced. And then the Hermit, we have that sort of going off to sort of assimilate all the things that you've learned. And then, because this is what you desire and this is what you deserve, gaining that wisdom there. And then what do you get? Well, you've got that, the 4 or the 6 of Swords is going off into a better place. That's really beautiful. I'll take it. I'll take it. Okay, I know this is way long and I'm going to have so much editing to do, so I'm just going to lay one more out here. I really like this, the 5 acts. So Act 1 is an opportunity. Here's the 8 of coins. How poor they are that have not patience. The slowness of the coins, I guess. But to have patience to master your craft, maybe that kind of thing. Number 2, for progress, we have the Devil. Dance a little bit with the Devil. Oops, I'm going to be too far off a whack here. For the 3rd act, have the Point of No Return with the Lady of Scepters. Of course, I haven't even asked or thought of a question, which means it's not very helpful. But the 4th act is Setbacks with Death. That's a pretty major setback, but the outcome being the 4 of Cups. But love is blind and lovers cannot see. Because I don't see the 4 of Cups quite the same way as the Rider. It definitely has some, I think, underlying Rider-Waite-Smith, although it's not exact, even though it is pips. I do think that in terms of quote-wise, that it is Rider-Waite-Smith in the quotes. But this is one I'm definitely going to try, because I like the idea of the 5 acts and doing those. But I love this casket one, and I'm definitely going to try all these other ones, like a romance one. You have the Lovers, which is a good card to show up for lovers. The Question, the intellect, head over heart, the dreams and imaginations, practical concerns, complications, and the end result. I quite like that just in terms of visually. So I'm definitely going to try these. You know, I've been trying to, you know, in every month or so, go back and give sort of accounting of how they've actually worked out in terms of reading. And so I will certainly come back and do that. But I have to say thank you to Jen for passing this on, even though I know it was way too much for your hands as well as the pips, but I definitely think I'm going to love it, and I think that the book is really fantastic and one that I will certainly be sitting with and refreshing. You know, since the names are cut off the bottom, I'll definitely have to look up to see the plays until I get to know them a little bit, but that's going to be a nice Shakespeare refresher. So yes, love it, love it, love it. Hope you've enjoyed this, and I haven't completely shattered your mind with my geekiness. Have an absolutely wonderful day.